control it, because of which a lot of overflowing of the river happened, especially at the Delhi river bank. Uh, so the riverbank at Delhi has a lot of informal settlements, and because of the overflowing of the river, they had to be displaced. Now these displacement of the informal settlement was an annual thing, but because of the news channels and media, this came to a picture, like this was brought in the picture. Yeah, so there is also other floods in 1995 and 1978, where a lot of families were affected by it. And 1978 had experienced the highest recorded level, where 1 million people were affected by it. Going to the next slide. So basically, this whole paper has three major topics, subtopics. Sorry. So first is the visibility and the place, where it shows where the news channel was shooting the whole event on detail and how they have dramatized the whole thing, and because of which a large number of people has become aware of the fact what happened over there. Also, how it gives an introduction to the Yamuna Express Highway which was built over there, and why it was built. So the second point is the microcosm of the nature and culture, where a lot of migratory birds which used to come to the Yamuna River, how they have reduced and why it has reduced, and what is the government's response to these issues. The pollution and illegality is basically what kind of pollution has happened, who is the main reason of pollution, and who has been affected by it, and like yeah, and how government has like blamed certain people for pollution, whereas the actual people who are polluting is different. So next, the displacement of the poor. So basically these poor people ने pollute किया है, so now उन लोग को displace करना पड़ेगा, and we have to make a riverfront over there. That is like a kind of attitude which they had. Coming, so how the government schemes have provided to compensate with the people who has to be displaced. Like what kind, who receives the compensation. Then commodification and the creation of value is basically where Yamuna is cleared of all the encroachment, what the Supreme Court allows, what Supreme Court has decided, like what is there, and how usually most of the citizens see like this the riverfront as a welcoming thing, rather than what is actually how it is affecting is not how is known to the people. The last point was about the ecology and the community aesthetics. Yeah, so this is just a small brief on what the other topics will be. Now, I think Janil shall begin, and he'll talk in detail about the visibility and the yeah. Next.
Next. Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
So kind of I'll speak about the visibility and about the place. So as Shivam mentioned, as the water used to come from the catchment part of the Himalayas, and then is to flow from into other bodies. But in a large quantity of this water was flowing. But at the same moment, the dams and the other water storage body were opened up, because the water should not spill to the other land parts, and should affect the other villages. And this was made sure about it. So in 2010 floods, the main occurrence was not it was at a large scale occurrence, but the visibility was in the it was captured by the these news channels at a large, because in 2010 the floods occurred in a large scale, and during the past years there were floods, but at a small quantity people were affected. At the moment in 2010, the uh, in September 2010, the danger mark was set, and about the danger mark, 2 meters was like the meters it rose about, and that become a newsworthy for the people over there. And these reporting channels used to go with their vans, and minute by minute they used to capture these movements, and also used to show the danger mark. And as you can see in the photograph at the below, they used to show the state of the railway bridge. Then they also used to show about the consequent dislocation of the traffic, and also they used to interview these government officials and also the people in the neighborhood, how they got affected, and all. But in this capturing these movements, they also used to later on dramatize these events and used to show in the day to day time. And because of that, there was a growth in the news media also, and they used to make aware of they used to make the people aware about the event which was occurring. So can we go to the next slide? Uh, can you go to the next slide?
It changed,
Yeah,
General.
yeah.
Then you can
Okay,
continue.
okay, I got it, got it now. So about the Yamuna Express Highway. So Yamuna Express Highway was like built to ease the purpose was to build to make to ease the road traffic congestion along the north-south artery of the city, and also the construction was made faster because there was a Commonwealth game which was held in 2010 in the Indraprastha Stadium, which lies. Can you in the map you can see the Indraprastha Stadium lies to the south of the city, and the express highway used to cut through this unfamiliar landscape, and beside on the western you can see the river flowing towards it, and on the eastern side there used to be many industries and power stations over there, and gardens over there. So kind of brief about the express highway. And then for the in 2010, the many of these places were submerged into the water, into the flood, but the express highway, because of its huge height and huge gigantic pillars, the people used to get over the bridge and used to gaze at this huge expanse, liquid expanse, this imperial iron bridge. Then the tree tops which used to come out like a miniature bushes from the water. The reporters also used to go over there and used to report from the live locations, and this become a very high vantage point from where people could explore the floods and used to gaze at it. So can you go to the next slide? So express highway for the people was an irony because there was no relation with the Yamuna river body, which is a sacred river body in the city of the Delhi, and whereas the express highway set as a single identity, where there are on the express highway you can see there are no recognizable landmarks, no street side vendors, no shops on the but and no pedestrians also, just a broad stretch of concrete where there is a circulation of the speeding cars and just a big blue signboards. But and then comes an anthropologist, Mark Og, which he speaks about this place as a non-place because he tells that at a first glance, if you see this space, it does not seem a space at all, because he mentions a space should be referred to as a relational, historical, and sociological aspects to it, and Yamuna being a huge identity, a strong identity towards express highway, it doesn't stand at all. So kind of he they speak he speaks about the irony, which is an irony to the people. Yeah. So for the Bansi will take on.
Yeah, so however, if one zooms in into this non-place, they realize that nature always makes way for itself. And when I say nature, I'm not only referring to birds and vegetation, but also the tendency of us humans to go and settle wherever an opportunity presents, which will help one earn his bread. Next. The river has been an active site for migratory birds. Birds from extreme cool regions of Siberia and Russia come here. The Yamuna wetlands become a host to these birds, such as the black-headed and the brown-headed gulls, until the climatic condition stabilizes in their homelands, which is usually around the months of March and April. However, in recent years, a significant decline has been noticed. Next. Regardless of the Yamuna banks being termed as a non-place, one can't ignore the fact.
Bansi, you've been muted.
I'll just repeat myself. Yeah. Um, okay. Regardless of the Yamuna banks being termed as a non-place, one can't ignore the fact that this is a huge open space very close to the dense urban context of the city. The people of Delhi, however, aren't taking efforts to make the most of it. Whereas organizations from outside, pretty far away actually, like the Bombay Natural History Society, are taking up many initiatives to revive these wetlands by bringing others here and showing them that what all it has to offer. Next. As the rest of the paper mentions, pollution is the root cause of most of the issues. The pollution levels have increased by 2.5 times between 1980 and 2005. Many things are responsible for this, like the 19 sewage drains from Delhi, which open out into the river, the 359 industrial units directly and indirectly dumping their highly toxic waste into Yamuna, of which 42 are from Delhi itself. The locals residing along the river banks are also responsible. However, they are helpless and uh, they actually do not have the facilities and thus end up using the water body for their day-to-day domestic activities. But some other practices by them, like dumping of dead bodies of the deceased dead and other religious practices, are also a major contributor to the pollution. The catchment area of these wetlands is were being used for farming by the locals after a certain point, though they started using chemicals such as insecticides and pesticides to get better results, which leached into the soil and the adjacent river. Next slide. As a result of this, vegetables started showing up with high toxin levels. Finally, now the people of the rest of the Delhi were affected and aware of the presence of the river once again. And as a result of this, and as a result of these all these newspaper articles coming forth, the government finally decided to carry out tests. And after a few years in the court, a final order was passed in December 2019, asking the farmers over there to stop farming in the Yamuna wetlands. Next. The thing to be noted here is that how the government prefers to deal with such issues concerning ecological aspects. As seen in this case, they prefer taking shortcuts in the form of bans which affect the poor the most, in spite of their riverfront project. Projecting a healthy future, which just shows how realistic their projects are going to be. Even back in 1990, when the locals complained that the sacred river's water was too filthy for them to carry out their rituals, the BJP government at that time took the shortcut and installed an exclusive pipeline from the distant river Ganga to supply them with the holy Ganga Jal. And they did so instead of actually taking the straightforward route, which would have been to like take enough efforts and clean the river up back then itself, and imposing stricter laws to help with the pollution control. But the government always just prefers to take shortcuts. It has been noticed. Thank you. Next.
So I'll be continuing about the pollution, illegality, and the ethnic cleansing. So the picture you can see here is a very recent picture, which is a toxic froth which has started to appear, which had started to appear on the river, on the surface of the river, and this isn't the first time that this has happened. Why this happened was that this picture is actually from 2019, in November of 2019. So what actually happened was that the air quality in Delhi was extremely toxicating and almost was termed as deadly. And at the same time, the water in the Yamuna river was also polluted because there was this sewage water coming from different homes which had soaps and detergent components. So the air and the water, they started reacting with each other, making it so toxic, and this frothy thing to start coming. So the water actually flows from a very higher height of the Okhla barrage, and due to the force at which it was coming, these bubbles started to appear at like a larger scale, and it was almost like this entire thing which is filled with froth. So what's very ironical about this is that the river has such a has so much of a religious importance, but on the other hand, it also takes all the pollution and waste of the city and the industries. And the people, as you can see in the pictures, are so ignorant about the pollution which is being caused, and they're so into their religious ceremonies that they're almost, you can actually just understand how ignorant they are towards it. Yeah, so some of them were even actually seen taking selfies in the so-called bubble bath which they were having. So next slide. So dating back to how all of this started to, what you saw in the previous slide, till 2009, the waters in the Yamuna were distinguishably very clear, and compared to, all the silt-laden yellow of the Gangetic Plain. But due to the high density of population and the rapid industrialization, now the Yamuna has become one of the most polluted rivers in the world. So as industrialization increased, the need for migrant workers increased, and more people started coming to the city and started settling along the river. In the late 1970s, the Indian construction and infrastructure was given more importance, which brought a lot of workers to the city, and these workers started staying back in the city instead of going back to their hometowns in the desire of employment. So this gave rise to a large number of informal settlements along the river. So since they started settling along the river started providing for their spaces in different forms, and the people itself started informally demarcating their functions along the river. So dhobis used to come, they used to wash and dry their clothes, and all the soap water was let into the river. People used to come and have funerary practices, how Bansi mentioned. They used to, throw ashes into the river. It was a place for these city dwellers to come, and they used to also come and pollute the land. But what was something of a major concern is that the along the river, it became this vast open air toilet where only the shrubs and the outcrops used to provide for privacy. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So the thing is that the poor had to depend on the river as a resource, but not for food or fodder, but for a basic biological function of defecation, which to the larger population started contributing to a sense of wasteland and brought disgust in the wider population. But it was such that the poor had no sanitation and health facilities which were provided to them. So then this became like the open air toilet for them. So for the Asiad 82, the Yamuna floodplain was actually diverted for a players building hostel, and the workers who were involved in it, they started coming and settling along the west embankment of the open plain. And during, like, between the 1980s and the 1990s, there was an encouragement from the Congress politicians, which led to the expanding of the settlements even more on both sides of what is called as a strip of no man's land. So by 2004, there were almost 350,000 people who were living along the Yamuna. And because there were so many people, it started building a community, and eventually they started strengthening their houses with like pakka brick. They started getting electricity. They started building schools and health facilities for themselves within the community. So since all of this started to develop, there were more people and there was a larger dependency on the river for activities, which started to increase in the contamination. So in 2004, defecation along the Yamuna became the grounds for the demolition of their homes, where the Delhi High Court held the Yamuna Pushta Basti responsible for the pollution and the encroaching. Next slide. So the 7 million people who are living in these illegal settlements like Yamuna Pushta, as I mentioned earlier, had no access to drains and a sewage system or any healthcare or sanitation facilities. So by ordering the eviction on the grounds of pollution, the judiciary has placed the burden of excrement produced by the Delhi's well-to-do section on the working class of the bastis along the river. While it is actually very true that these settlements of the Yamuna Pushta were polluting the land, which was actually owned by the Uttar Pradesh Flood Control and Irrigation Department. There have been far larger traces where the government and private bodies have violated the master plan of Delhi, which actually categorizes these lands into ecological zones, and they have started building over it. So over the years, there have been 2 power plants which have come. There have been disused sports facilities. There is a waterfront area with IT parks. There is a metro station, the Akshardham temple, which was built along. After 2010, there were these luxury buildings and apartments which started to come along. There were shopping malls and there was housing even provided for the metro workers. There was a bus depot which was there. But all of this was legalized by the Supreme Court, and none of these projects were criticized for being along the river. and using that land. But the court, like the High Court, only started demolishing the houses of the poor, which eventually led to a displacement in the poor, which Ishika will continue.
Yeah. So as Twisha mentioned, like these people, the people of the Yamuna, Pushta Basti, were seen as a source of pollution to the Yamuna bank. So citywide campaigns of clearing out the Yamuna banks and beautifying it so as to promote tourism were held out. So which displaced about more than 150,000 people at a time. So the Delhi government initiated a policy for all these slum dwellers. So under this policy, people who could produce a proof of their residence or even their ancestors' residence were given a land compensation, which meant that those who could prove that they had settled in this city before 1990 were eligible to receive rupees 7,000, a plot of land which was about 18 square meters on the outskirts of the city. So those who settled between 1990 and 1998 were given a smaller land. But despite this policy, only 16% of the people were allotted plots which were far away from the main city and with the least amenities provided. And the rest of the people found their names missing on the municipal list. So the government had thought of the different policies for these small squatters, but none of like building of the small dwellings, but none of these were in the economic reach of these poor people. And the poor people, these squatters would usually build their houses near their workplace so that they could manage the time and travel expenses. But this relocation to the outskirts of the city led to them losing up their jobs. So the government, instead of installing sewage lines to clean the Yamuna river banks, they started demolishing these the slums. So all this was done ahead of the coming of the Commonwealth Games and to beautify the picture of Delhi as a world-class city. So similar uprootings were also seen in Mulchand, Basti, China colony in Delhi, which were also an attempt to beautify the riverbanks. So these people started living with the fear of being uprooted anytime. So they started living in temporary shelters instead of pakka houses. But at the same time, the government allowed building and coming of the chemical industries, which would then release effluents in the river. But since they were seen as planned, they were allowed to build. So, as D. Eschner, Escher Guttner, an interdisciplinary scholar, quoted that according to the aesthetic mode of governing, if a development project looks world class, then it is most often declared planned. And if a settlement looks polluting, it is sanctioned as unplanned and illegal. So he has also written a book based on the city planning of Delhi. So this book talks about the different policies and arguments adopted by the Delhi government to uproot the city dwellers. So the people, according to this, the people who don't own a legal property or land in the city and lived in these illegal settlements were considered and termed as non-people and nuisance. So Asher also mentioned that Delhi adopted a scheme of vision to clear the city and make it a slum-free city. So according to this vision, those people who were not were living in places which were not aesthetically pleasing and were unhygienic, they were considered as unplanned areas and then they were uprooted. So the authenticity of Delhi is that 70% of Delhi is owned by illegally owned by the rich people who have seemed to grab more of the land than these poor slum dwellers. But again, there are no charges against the rich. The ones who are suffering are always the poor. So Keyur can take over from here.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear? Hello.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So by 2007, most of all the encroachments were cleared from the Yamuna banks. Like totally clear. The site was open for investment for real estate and all the things. In 2009, the Supreme Court approved the construction of luxury high-rise apartments for the Commonwealth Games Village. तो इसके पहले देर वर मेनी प्रोटेस्ट लाइक मतलब 1-2 साल पहले लाइक इट वाज अ वेरी हरी मतलब एकदम घाई में ये लोग को बनाना था एकदम एंड में. तो इसके पहले बहुत सारे प्रोटेस्ट हुए थे like by the farmers who had their patch land like on which the government was going to build the village, as well as there were many environmentalist NGOs like Yamuna GA Abhiyan who were against it. So they said that there were many reasons not making it. Like the main two reasons were like a floodplain is always crucial for groundwater recharge as well as for accommodating the excess flow during the monsoons. Like in the north, the rivers are slow flowing rivers, so they take a wider area for flowing. तो जब भी मानसून गिरता है लाइक बारिश गिरती है तभी वो पूरा फैलने के लिए जगह चाहिए रहता है रिवर को. बट all of these things were ignored. So the YJA filed a petition in the Delhi High Court. Delhi High Court, after seeing all the reports submitted by the Ministry of Environment, came to a conclusion and set up a committee for monitoring the environmental impact. But the Delhi Development Association, who was responsible for the Commonwealth Games Village, was totally against it. They started the construction, and as also they, in response, as also they appealed against the Delhi. They appealed against the Delhi High Court ka order in the Supreme Court. So अब Supreme Court में they put up two arguments saying कि the Commonwealth Games is of national importance, as also in 2000 Akshardham temple was built. So how can you say now that we are building a Commonwealth Games village in the similar site, and how can you say that it is not how can you say that it is affecting the environment when you allowed in 2000 the construction of Akshardham temple? So these two were the main points over which the Supreme Court agreed and allowed the construction of the Commonwealth Games village. So here the Supreme Court did not justify its decisions on grounds that the urgency or importance of the project was more important than the environmental concerns, as also the Supreme Court said that the place is not a riverbed or a floodplain. Now, after the approval of Commonwealth Games Village, the site was open to all the real estate business and the get quick rich schemes. So, like government started giving the land at interest free, at interest free rates. So, and they started giving many subsidies. So, अगर तुम एक यहाँ पे टावर बना रहे हो तो 2/3 of the flats आप बेचो, 1/3 of the flats give it to the government, we will sell it. तो like they started looking at the profits. मतलब एक साइड पे एनक्रोचमेंट निकाल दिए तो क्योंकि पोल्यूशन हो रहा है, पर अभी वापस तुम लोग उधर ही टावर्स बना रहे हो ताकि पोल्यूशन वापस होने ही वाला है. सो now all of this started because of the Akshardham temple, as I had said. So in 2000, the BJP government was at center and Lal Krishna Advani was the home minister at that time. अब ऐसा है कि लाल कृष्ण आडवाणी के दोस्त थे स्वामीनारायण सेक्ट के लीडर. सो उधर ही उनको Akshardham temple, that was the main reason why Akshardham temple was built. Like many people say it that way. So, and as also if you see the citizens of Delhi, in their eyes, this transformation is a welcome one because they are getting a skyline, like a 9 towers, so the skyline changes. So they are getting a skyline to be proud of. Like because in the place of the floodplain there is now a landscape of value in terms of money. Yeah. Over to Vishaka.
Yeah. Ishika, slide.
Sorry. So like like पीछे एक slide पीछे. So this was like a Google Map image showing like how was the floodplain in 2000. That this is only concentrating on East Delhi, and now like वो जो ऊपर वाला है, that is the Yamuna Bank Metro Depot, and the second one is the complex. Like it consists of Akshardham Temple and all the stadiums and the Commonwealth Village. As also on the left side of the river there is a metro depot, like वो जो construction है concrete का, that is the bus depot. Sorry, that is the bus depot that is coming up. Yeah, can continue. Yes.
Yeah, Ishika slide. Yeah, so starting with Yamuna Pushta resettlements, in 1982, the city saw a huge number of migrants coming for game-related construction. The games were Asian Games, and the number kept on increasing for next 2 decades. But the most of the residents started evicting the place soon because of pollution, which cleared the way for construction of capital intensive projects of urban infrastructure for rich and elite class. Ishika, next slide. Um, because of these projects, Delhi CM Sheila Dikshit had a vision of riverfront development which would mimic Thames in London and Seine in Paris, for which the Delhi CM, along with the London mayor, and some of his officials had a meeting to clean the river and build the project which fits into the cityscape and provide a cultural and gathering space. Various measures were taken which were like channelizing the river, pollution control, expanding its banks, cleaning of river, and exploring the landscape near the river banks. It also included bird sanctuaries, botanical gardens, water sports, cultural centers, bathing arts, and sewage treatment plants. And it also emphasized on pedestrian street, which was 2.5 kilometer long. This ambitious project of beautifying and restoring of the 22-kilometer stretch of Yamuna in Delhi was launched in 2001. But it also had many cons, like Ishka, next slide. Uh, it also had many cons like eviction of slum dwellers. Many thousands of people were affected, along with 5,000 school children. Sheila Dikshit government also promised to give new houses to these people and admission to their kids in schools, but the amount asked from slum dwellers for house was pretty high, due to which some of these people never got a new place to stay, and still there were no steps taken by the government for the same. Um, and the people who also got resettled were facing many problems like sewage problem in the colonies, as also mentioned earlier, and some of the other conflicts were like Ishka, next slide. Some of the other conflicts were between Environmentalist and Development Authority of Delhi, DDA. It will damage the ecology of river, the groundwater recharge would be affected, would reduce biodiversity, etc., etc. These were the some points listed. And due to channelizing of the river, Ishika, next slide. Due to channelizing of the river, also led to a huge flood in 2010, which had a and um, which had a great impact on the city. Uh, so in the end, this project has some of the cons some of the pros like creating a cultural center, gathering space, and beautifying the area, but at the same time it has its own natural and economical cons, which at some point were neglected by the government and not taken proper steps to implement it. So yeah, Shivam will conclude after this.
Yeah, so putting everything together, so basically what has happened is in 1970, say informal settlement increased because of the industrialization, and then 1978 May, a lot of the highest recorded flood ever happened. Then from 80 से लेके 90 के बीच में, a lot of because of the encouragement of the development in Delhi, a lot of these workers came and they kind of started settling over there. And from 1995, another big flood happened. 2001 was the year when the riverfront project was launched. 2004 was when the whole slum was demolished and and they cleared all the encroachments in 2007. So then SC ने allow किया the whole construction and the high-rise apartment, and how in 2010 the floods followed by the preparation of the Commonwealth Games. And the 2012, finally the Yamuna Express Highway ka bridge was completed. And 2019 was the year when court order to stop the farming alongside the river was there. So this is the whole kind of, just to put everything like when it happened when. Yeah, next slide. So this is where the paper ends. Now, Amita Bavaskar is basically a sociologist and professor of environmental studies and sociology. She has done extensive work in this topic. So these are few notable books that she has, few of the books that she has written. So I have also researched a part of his book named, next slide, please. In the hello, next slide. Yeah, so this is another book, in the belly of the river, where she is it's kind of on the same topic, where she also talks about how the Nehruvian imagination of the economy was based on industrial expansion, and how post independence the economic growth and dam projects became a part of the picture of development, and the displacement of the tribal population from the native land was considered as necessary, and the whole all these development projects, how they somehow just become like a political movement than actually a development project. Yeah, next slide, please. So we would also like to share our understanding of two other similar case studies which has happened in Sabarmati River and this Yangtze River. Rohit will talk about the Yangtze River and how the similar kind of effects are seen over here as well. Rohit, hello. Rohit, I think then let Ishika continue. I'll just call to her. Uh, Hello. Uh, Ishika.
Where has everyone disappeared?
I don't know.
I think Rohit is unmuting and trying to talk, but we can't hear him.
Oh, okay.
He's in the meeting. I can see that.
Yeah, he's there.
I don't mind. Like Ishika can go till the road figure out the net ka issue ki kya hai. Ishika will talk about the
Hello.
sorry,
Wait.
Dhriti will figure. Who is here?
Rohit?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So my case study is rising pollution at the Yangtze River front. So this river is China's longest river flow in the northern west part of the country to the East China Sea. The river takes water out to supply 400 million people with water for drinking, irrigation and industrial uses. This river has a major role in unifying northern and southern China and was a key of a driver of the country's low cost export and industrialization. The river serves as a major economic hub for the region, so the contributing up to 42% of this country's GDP through shipping, commerce, and agriculture. So yet this economic development has come at a hefty price of the China environment. So these are the reasons which I have added, and this is a causes like sewage runoff, industrial runoff, and agricultural runoff are happened in the China Yangtze River. In every year there is like next slide. So this the China coastal was the amount of plastic polluting as coastal more than 200 million cubic meter was found in the floating river of last 2 years ago. And now Ministry of Ecology Environment said that the most of the waste were dumped in the Delta region, region of the Yangtze River and the Pearl River, which connects to the Yangtze River between the China in the middle of a site. So facing these issues, many are getting lost, getting less result of this pollution. Next slide. Next slide. So this is the water system map. There are two municipality which handles this all pollution where it happens. So more population creates a more waste. So these cities are there are four cities who handles the ecosystems and the environmental program. And yeah, next slide. So, rising political tension, the China is facing the severe runoff of put direct effect on fishing stock. The Asia Pacific, which are already facing this overfishing and changes associated with global climate changes and including the rising temperature and ocean acidification. So millions of gallons sewage are dumped into the river along with chemicals from agriculture runoff. So this fertilizer flowing into this Yangtze River are lakes the with rain caused eutrophication. It was only way served. At the Yangtze River, water polluted was mainly due to the excessive agriculture, nitrogen and phosphorus, which is just a eutrophication. So that's the more issue is happening in these small rivers also. Now, United Nations of Environmental Programming estimate that marine of ecosystem suffered like in a billion in a year to damage caused this by waste. So yeah, that's the thing. And this estimate that cost of fishing, tourism, shipment industry is lot roughly like 1.3 billion for the region. Like every region has there a lot of waste are by this UENP, like United Nations Environment, puts money to clear these all issues and reducing this pollution. So in the global sequences, these causes with the developed shipping industry, there are number of ships coming and going every day on a Yangtze River. Some living waste were poured into river without treatment, and some sellers threw the litters into the river without a scruple. It becomes a severe cause of Yangtze River pollution. This waste ship of the these ships creates 75,000 ton, and the living sewage got 360 million tons in 2015. Like proper waste of this are handled by reducing by this programming. It was said that the people could walk on the waste decided and with no longer with no danger at the upstream. So like China is now more affected in bacterial diseases, and also the India is also facing these issues. So if you see in the dead zone of these fishes are affected and people are getting more dangerous effects on them. So yeah, the area along Yangtze River low reaches in one of the most processed region in China, whereas increasing the population, more people means the more living waste are and more population is happening. People environmental awareness are need to be strengthened on the site. So some like now the government is looking at the factories still discharge and like factories are discharging wastewater into Yangtze River on the slate, which is another important cause because of this lack of expenditure. And next slide. Next slide.
So I'm going to talk about a similar case like the Yamuna project, that is the Sabarmati riverfront in Ahmedabad. The river used to be almost dry and filled with sewage and waste, making it an environment and health hazard. The settlements on the riverbank were also prone to floods in the monsoon seasons. The project was opened in 2012, and again, like the Yamuna case, the main challenge for it were the people occupying the bank. Next slide. So in this project, spaces like market and laundry campus were provided so that the previous activities could still continue along with the additions of new spaces and activities for the city as a whole. But the previous occupants couldn't benefit from this new additions and this new spaces which were provided for them because they were moved out of the city. Next slide. Did it change? Okay, it's not changing. Okay, it changed. So I'll continue. So all sources show different numbers for the amount of people located. Similar to the Yamuna case, many people couldn't prove their eligibility, and instead of being provided with alternatives, the government instead sent in police to keep them in control. Only half of the people who were living there got houses, and even those places which were provided were far away from the city and any other needed facilities. So because of that, because of the high transport cost, many people left their jobs, and even their children had to leave their educations. In the new places, even sanitation facilities weren't provided, and instead of so because of this, the usage of fields as toilet, which was one of the main reason for the displacement, it uh, increased because of this. Next slide. So this is like a summary of forced displacement in any case, not particular to this. So most redevelopments always cause forced displacement, which leads to people losing their jobs, land, home, and it also increases marginalization and food, food insecurity along with morbidity and mortality rates. It also disrupts their community and leads to a loss of access to their common resources and even to the access to the public services like education and sanitization. Next slide. It's not changing for me, but I'll continue. So Sabarmati gets its water from Narmada River through a canal, which negatively impacts both of these rivers. Also, the riverfront project hasn't improved the groundwater recharge, which was their aim, and the drought-like condition of the river is also intensified. Even though the sewage is sent to treatment plants by 38 discharge points, and in 2019 an investigation was conducted about the quality of the water, and it shows that the river still gets untreated waste thrown into it. It doesn't affect the city and the riverfront as a whole, but it affects the people living in the nearby villages who are actually dependent on the river for their livelihood. Next slide. So in this project, they narrowed the river, and and the water was filled by bringing in water from the Narmada River, which kind of disrupts the natural dry river ecology for the Sabarmati River and also affects the Narmada River. The stretch beyond the city is still used for dumping of industrial waste. So the entire stretch, which is not a part of the city, is totally ignored. The river users within the city were forced out, and the straightening of the river with the retaining walls kind of leaves us with a canal instead of a river. So the last paragraph is a abstract from another paper which I found. So it talks about how the ideology behind riverbanks comes from seeing the river as an object to be beautified, and the urban poor who are using the river as uncivilized, like those people shouldn't taint the river by using it for their actual needs. So even though riverbanks can provide important and cultural spaces for the city as a whole, um, this thought needs a lot of rethought, and some another way needs to be introduced, because it's also harming the river and also the people, just so people can have a view kind of ideology. So yeah, we'll end our paper with this.
All right. Is there anything more that you'd like to add, or this is it, no?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It was a very good presentation. What we really liked about this class, in fact, is that you'll always go beyond the reading of the paper. You know, you always do a lot more research than just reading the paper and making a presentation on it. Okay, and that's very impressive. That's something that I think that you need to continue to do so. Okay. Yeah. Any questions? Anything that that the class would like to ask the group that has presented?
Or any other example from wherever you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a couple of observations, and maybe then others can join in too. The first thing is, of course, like Sarah said, the presentation across groups have been very nice. It looks like you have engaged yourself with the topic, with the framework, and you've gone beyond the paper and come up with examples and arguments. But one thing, everyone should take care that every time you use an image or anything, it should be properly referenced. You should not use any image in your presentation if it is not referenced, okay? Either it is your own image or you've taken from the internet or whatever. So the source of any quote, any image, any data, any news clipping, it has to be there. That even if it's a news clipping, that you have to clarify that you should put a small footnote that for what date it is, okay? Coming to the paper, it's a very interesting paper, one of my favorites, and I really like that some of you went ahead and even spoke about Bhaviska's paper on Narmada, which I'll discuss a little more in detail later. But I want to hear from the group which had presented Sanjay Srivastav's paper on Disney Divinity, because it speaks from the same site. Do you have anything to add to the conversation? Do you remember what you spoke? Is there anyone from that group? Nobody is there?
I think they'll be there.
I think it was the second or the second group which had presented Sanjay Srivastav papers on urban spaces, Disney Divinity.
Yeah, it was the second group. I was a part of the group.
You were part of it?
Okay.
Ishan, yeah, Ishan.
Yeah, I was a part. So I was actually very fascinated when they started, like when Tisha mentioned it for the first time. I was like, oh shit, ye bhi hai. But then when Keor was like going on about it, that time then I started to understand the sort of larger landscape that took place at that time. So in our presentation, I think we were not able to explain the larger picture, but this like listening to this, we're able to understand and relate to what was written in the paper more better.
No, of course you present, because Sanjay Srivastav spoke from the same site, and where we will talk later in the next class, that how even among environmental discourses, because this paper was originally supposed to be presented when we speak about environment and the conflict arising from it, and how Bhaviskar and even Sanjay Srivastav in other paper has written about this whole practice of bourgeois environmentalism, okay? And then he brings in, like Ishan said, that the same site where he speaks about how middle class actually perpetuates and normalizes these kind of practices, so it is just not the Akshardham where nobody is really worried that what kind of a site it was or who were the people earlier who were occupying the space. Even as late as 2017 or 18, we had the World Yoga Day organized by Art of Living Group. When was it? 2018, 17?
Yeah, I'm not very sure, 17 or 18.
Just 2-3 years back, okay?
Yeah.
I think 2018 or 17, when Art of Living at the very same site had organized this World Yoga Day, and they had actually cemented the floodplain of Yamuna and made construction sites, made those podiums and ramps for people to walk in and come, because it was also a government of India where the Prime Minister was the chief guest. And later on there was a High Court verdict where Art of Living was, I think, fined some 2 to 4 crore rupees, which has not been.
It was fined in crores by the NGT, National Green Tribunal.
National, yes.
they said that we will be cleaning up the river, we will make it better than the condition now, but they did not do it. As well as they said at that time that we will be leaving some enzymes into the river, which they did not disclose. They did not tell what was that thing. They just said that we will be doing all these things and make a river in a better condition than it is now. Though we are doing the art of living, the concert, the whole cultural
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, so this category of better is actually reflected through other paper also. Like very interestingly, you also spoke about the Sabarmati riverfront, which has been designed by HPC. And the chief architect, at least at that point of time for HPC, was Bimal Patel himself. And if you read, and I found it very interesting, and maybe I'll share here later. There are two papers. There are at least 3-4 papers by Renu Desai and Navdeep Mathur, where they talk about this very site of Sabarmati, and I think one of you have quoted from Renu's report, no? Where Bimal,
Yes.
where Bimal himself says that people along the river, they don't know how to use the river. Okay, what do you think does that mean, or what makes you think when somebody tells you that? Ishan or anyone else?
I
Sorry,
don't
could you
think
repeat?
that.
I wasn't able to.
Okay, so the like Bimal and other people, the chief architect who were part of the designing of the Sabarmati river front, and in many other places, like KU said for the Green Tribunal, also Art of Living had given that explanation that they'll make it better. Okay, or the people along the river, they don't know how to use the river and they pollute it, and we are going to make it a better site. What kind of an understanding does it have if you look through categories of caste or class or whatever?
It's honestly like how during colonization the British would come like how the British conquered the other countries, and they used to say that, oh, we white people are actually better at understanding than what you understand. Like even though you might have lived here for thousands of years, like we have more information and more knowledge, and it's like a colonizer's perspective when these upper class or upper caste architects come into these spaces and say कि अरे हम लोग को मालूम है हम ऐसा डिजाइन करेंगे and हम वैसा डिजाइन करेंगे. So like
Yeah.
that's the kind of
Yeah.
like it
So
and most of the time happens without the opinions of the people who are actually living there.
yes.
Right.
So for example, if you read all these travelogues which were written during the colonial period, okay, like for India, most extensively it was written by Francis Buchan, who traveled across and who did a survey of small and medium towns and other towns across India. There was this continuous writing where they wrote as Indian settlement as filthy and dusty, and the roads are muddy or dusty or narrow or congested, or the housing structures itself. And there were a few other papers, no, Sarah, which we had done in masters
Yes, yes,
on.
they've kind of, yeah,
I
given
don't remember the name, but there's some
yeah,
very two, three interesting paper. Again, if you want, we can share here.
yeah. I think we should do that. Yeah.
So connecting this dot between Sabarmati and Narmada side. So how many of you have heard of the Indian Ocean Band? Please don't tell me you
I'm sure
haven't.
they have, no?
No, increasingly every year I see, new set of.
Really?
Huh.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Has anybody heard of the Indian
Yeah,
Ocean
I see
Band?
two hands, two hands, two hands, two hands. Mohit has heard. Then who else?
It's a pity.
Madhura.
Only two
They're
people.
becoming old. They're becoming old now.
Seriously. So Indian Ocean is the band which is the lead singer is Ram, who himself is a environmental engineer from IIT and MIT. At that time, he was also spouse of Amita Bhaviskar. They had worked extensively in Jhabua district in MP for the Narmada Bachao Andolan, and so there is a lot of song which they have. I don't know if you have heard of the song Mareva, which is on Narmada River itself. If you haven't heard Indian Ocean, I think everyone should listen to their music. They also do a lot of protest music. I'm writing here if you're not clear. Okay, but coming to this whole example which everybody shared for Sabarmati, so when Narmada project was started, like they also even quoted from Bhaviskar's book that at that time Nehru imagined that dams and factory sites are the temples of a newly developing India. Okay, and he appealed to the people that you should give up your land in the larger interest of the community. Okay, so what we call now as primitive accumulation at that point of time started with this whole conversation that in the larger interest of your society you need to give up common goods or common property resources. And eventually at that point of time Narmada project was initiated to take care of the water requirements in the Saurashtra region of Gujarat and to take care of drinking water issues in Kutch, okay, which is a drought hit region. But ultimately, the water it barely goes to Kutch, and in Saurashtra region also it mostly caters to the upper caste Patel groups for farming, and they farm actually sugarcane and water, which is sugarcane and rice, which is a water intensive crop. But where the water now goes is on the beautification of the Sabarmati riverfront. So Sabarmati riverfront, every time there is a guest or every time there is an international seminar, or what do they have, that kite festival?
Yeah, it's the kite festival.
हाँ, the kite festival, then they ऊपर से वो लोग पानी छोड़ते हैं और just to make it look like a riverfront. But this whole obsession with riverfront, I would like to hear from other people also in different parts of the country, because I know even many small and medium town which has a riverfront, especially in UP, Bihar, have this whole obsession with riverfront projects. Can anybody else add to the conversation? Or even, is there anybody from Lucknow, Raipur? I know all these places have these. Indore, Patna. Nobody? Calcutta? I thought we had people, quite a few.
Vidisha?
Yeah, say. So, so the Hooghly riverfront, I've been there like quite a few times. It's like this big stretch which includes there's the national park which has that famous banyan tree, and then there's another park called Millennium Park, and so there are like it's like a lot of parks, and then it's a proper paved street, and there are benches and everything, and so there was this big debate about the making, because many people feel that due to that paving, the whole natural beauty which the river had earlier, it kind of gets ruined, because like, and also the government in our state has this weird obsession with like blue and white colors. So they like alternately paint the balustrades blue and white, and it kind of looks very funny in a way. And so there was this huge debate, like where a part of the like architecture fraternity of the city, they were against it, and a part who were clearly like involved in some sort of government projects or whatever, and had this need to agree to whatever they were doing. They like, so that it happened because when we search for images of the Hooghly river, you see this, there's this famous image which comes up, which is like a sunset and there's a small boat on the river, and then you see the Howrah Bridge on top of it. But and the sides are not paved like they are right now. So but then everyone said that that whole visual gets ruined and all of it. But yeah, but apart from that, I don't think there was a big problem of like relocating people as such, because the riverfront, it had old ghats, like which were mostly built by the British, because like the city was discovered by, like it was built by the British only. So like it already had ghats and everything pehle se, and they were used for like cremations, or they were used as viewing. So there's this famous ghat called the Prinsep Ghat. So it's like a viewing pavilion sort of a thing. And so I don't think there was a big problem of relocation of people from there, unlike in Yamuna's case.
Okay. So a question to everyone and even to the ones who presented. Of course, there's an environmental aspect of it, and in this conflict theory class, we are trying to look through different kind of sides of, these kind of conflicts which occurs because of the ruptures which is created. Some of them, which is also at times called as structural violence. Where you are evicting people or you're shifting people. So in case of the paper which was presented for Delhi, for this site of Yamuna, uh, what kind of conflicts would you see? One is this whole understanding of environment, and like Baviskar writes in terms of the understanding of environmentalism of the middle class and the understanding of it through the poor people's this thing. But what are the other kinds of conflict do you think emerges in such sites? Where is the group which is presented?
Like in case of Varanasi, the Kashi corridor project, that around it, like a lot of destruction is taking place. I mean, the old heritage buildings, which is 300 years old also.
Just to stop you, so do you know who is doing the Kashi development project? Anyone here?
No.
Anyone else? Any guess? I just spoke about it. Smart guess, blind guess.
Not very difficult.
Arey, abhi to I told no. Who's doing it? Ishan?
Modi.
अरे ऐसे तुम लोग बोल देते हो ना. प्राइम मिनिस्टर को थोड़ी इज्जत दिखाया करो. He is the prime minister. He is not the chief architect. I'm talking about the architect. Who is the
Bimal
chief
Patel.
architect? Yes.
Bimal Patel.
Yeah.
Yes, he is designing the Kashi project. Yes, go ahead, please. I just wanted to flag it off so that your narrative makes more sense. Yes, please. Who was speaking?
Yeah, so basically, the buildings which are even 300 years old are being broken down and being replaced with this corridor project and for the tourists. So the concern for the locals is lost there.
So how do you think, should it be done or should it be done at all?
Like concerning the locals, I really don't think this project should be carried forward, because how the expanse of which the destruction is taking place, and the locals have been living there for a really long time now, and to displace them altogether to a new location.
For it?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What is the rational justification? How are they justifying their project?
Building it, basically they're building it for the tourists only, to bring in tourism more, and make the ease of worshipping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other example from any other place? Is there anyone from Lucknow? Okay, so this whole thing about having river fronts, and what does this practice of or this obsession for getting a riverfront area cleared, what does it lead to? What is the larger intention in this, whole language of commodification or acquisition, land acquisition and displacement? What is the ultimate goal by people who are doing it?
It seems like it's just for like if you look at the bigger picture, like it just seems like it's for political gains.
A riverfront, what political gain do you do?
No, like the person who's building it, like right now, when you ask that who's doing the Kashi project, Kale directly pointed out that it's Modi. So I feel the people who are it's being funded by the government, and the current government is all doing such projects to like at the end of their tenure, they can say that yeah, we did this. Like I think that is one of the important like reasons why these people even want to do it.
Okay, but any other larger reason? Because ultimately the larger reason has to be more money making. So what do you think is that?
So in our paper, Sanjay Srivastava talked a lot about like middle class consumerism and
Yes.
so I feel like that's a lot of it because even like bringing in tourism or making it a spot for people within the city itself to go there and they have like businesses set up there. So they remove all of these lower class people and it becomes like a place of enjoyment for the middle class. So it's like consumerism and just making money.
Yeah, the ultimate intention is to clear up real estate, right? These are prime lands, and then the other larger intention is to commercialize every process of your life. Okay, so even if it's a religious practice, or this whole practice of, like, even if you see the site of Varanasi Ghat itself, if you see in earlier movies and if you see in recent past, there's this obsession, where it has become more commercialized. They have these grand aartis in the evening, which was not the case earlier. Like I at least have memories of going to Banaras earlier, and you didn't have such grand evening processions or aarti taking place. And then, like they spoke, Sanjay Srivastava speaks about that it is through these religious discourses where the practices of commodification enters your own life, where then contesting it or questioning it becomes difficult. It becomes more precarious, that how can you question something like that, and which happens for all kind of religious practices or sites. Whether I have memories of going to, what is that place, Ajmer. Yeah, it's equally commercialized, because everywhere the larger intention is to optimize the real estate which comes along these spaces. Okay, Sarah, you want to say something? I think everyone else is sleeping, vanished.
Okay. So in the next class, anyways, we'll be doing a detailed lecture on environmentalism
Yeah.
and structural inequality. That is the way we have titled the topic as. Uh, okay. We also want to take this time to acknowledge the email that you marked the copy, marked, where you mentioned about the certain problems that you're going through as a class. And I don't know whether, the email has been acknowledged or not. But from, both Shima and I, we just wanted to let you know that we don't know whether we have been burdening you with a lot of, work additional to what you have been doing. But we hope that this class, by and large, was beneficial to you all. And perhaps in the light of that, we have encouraged you to read, some of the articles that we have sent across, and also, make presentations on certain topics, so that, that the discussion on the topics that we have been doing in this particular class related to humanities, that is on social conflict, it becomes more engaging and more enriching. But we are very sorry that, if you have had to, undergo a lot of trouble for all of this. And we do understand that we are living in very difficult times. And then just as we know that y'all are also doing the same. Okay. And we are all trying to get ourselves familiarized with this unfortunate term that is being used, that is the new normal. Okay, so we just have one more class to be done, and that is next week. That is the 25th of September. And while this class we are going to be ending shortly, the next class we just like to let you know that it will be a little longer. Uh, Maybe not as long as you want it to be, or hope it not to be. But it might be like, from 1:30 to at the most 3:34. Okay. That's because we have a lecture and then it is being followed by one last presentation. Okay. And it's the last and the final class. And so we assure you that we will not bother you with more, you know, or engage you with more lectures and give you more work to be done. Okay. But yeah, if there is anything that you would like to specifically tell us or let us know. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you like this, but actually two presentations are left.
Is it true? How is
Bio,
it?
the last group, so 60 to 70 is in the last batch. There is one 70 to 80 batch, and we are doing the Nokia SEZ and biopolitics.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm
the
so sorry.
other one that
Are you prepared today? No.
no,
No,
but like
I don't think so.
started,
Yeah.
but we're not prepared.
That's
Okay,
okay.
so next class
So
we'll
then,
take both the presentations and Nokia SEZ. We can
yeah,
discuss
all
the
right.
environmental aspect
Yeah, then
also.
we'll do that. Okay, what we'll do is we'll combine our lecture with your presentation, and we'll not make it too long. Also, we'll just make sure that some of the main points are being covered, huh? Yeah. Otherwise, I think because I don't think we're going to get a chance after the 25th. Then comes 2nd of October, which will be a holiday. And then after that, I'm not too sure whether we'll be able to engage in any lectures further than that. Okay, so we'll do this. Hey, Nashima, I think this will be better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comment?
Yeah, anything that you want to tell us?
Today's
Anything?
discussion paper. Did
Yes.
you guys get the paper? I have uploaded 2 papers in the comment box. So, there's one news article and there's a paper by Navdeep Mathur. Okay.
Yes, Vidisha, yes.
So actually, I had food in my mouth, so I couldn't speak very properly. But
okay.
I also wanted to add that about the relocation thing I was talking about in the Hooghly River. So basically, the area around the river is mostly industrial areas, like it has factories and jute mills. So that is the reason why there was no issues in relocating, because those were not touched, obviously, because they help in like they hold the economy of Bengal together. So that's why I think what Mehak was saying, that the houses get like destroyed without like considering what is going to happen to them. I think if you notice the difference between what's happening in Kashi and what happened in Calcutta, is that the pre-existing stuff were not disturbed here because they were of some value to the state. But then in that case, just because it's personal property, they stopped caring about what is going to happen due to the destruction. And also about what Bansi said about the political agenda. I don't think it's always political agenda though, because like honestly speaking, after the redevelopment of the riverfront of Hooghly, one thing that is improved, I'm going to say, is probably the tourism, because like all these parks, they have tickets for the like ferry rides and all of that. And that in a way has become an income for the state. So I don't think it's always done with like a political agenda in mind. It can often be like just a thing to like beautification or just like improving the current condition. Like it can also be that, I feel.
Okay, does anybody in the group want to react to her? Speak about her understanding about beautification, ticketing, having ferry rides. Huh?
So the Sabarmati riverfront, it started as a thing to improve the quality of the river. Like that's what they said before starting the project. But at the end, it became about having amusement parks at the sites, and they have all this gardens and different parks and train rides and stuff going on around. And the actual reports of the river kind of show that whatever the main aim was hasn't been fulfilled. So no matter what they say or like they tell us, the reason the focus is going to change on the money and the commercialization at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think for Calcutta, you should read Jinia Mukherjee's paper. Okay. You'll have a better understanding, and like what we'll talk about also a bit in the next class is this whole understanding of beautification drive. Okay. But what does beautification drive do to you? Okay, that is what is middle class activism for environment, or like the Juhu Resident Welfare Association imagines that if students or if anybody else or if any like everyone is allowed to use the cafe park, it becomes like a normal place or a down market kind of a place, as in it won't be sanitized anymore, and it will look nice and all kind of people will come, an aspect of which will even be covered in Shilpa Phatke's paper. How we always imagine that some set of people make some spaces always look down market or insecure or a dirty place. Okay. Because there's plenty, there's plenty written for Delhi, for Calcutta, for Bangalore, which makes you think about this whole understanding of beautification, like beautification for whom, and then at the expense of what, you know like at the expense of livelihood, or at the expense of a lot of communities, and a lot of community which is then displaced come from lower caste, they come from marginalized community, a lot of them are transgender, a lot of them are orphans, homeless people, mm, you know and of course there's always this continuous question that should we let our river become dirty by these people, and but having a real estate doesn't ensure that the river ecology is being taken care of, because ultimately, like they showed for China and for other side, it is the ecology you should be really concerned about, and Yamuna ecology seems to go from worse to worse. There is no improvement at such, even after removing such huge amount of people from Yamuna Pushta for over the years, and like for their own paper also I could share here, they referred a bit of Ashna Ghetner's paper where he talks about nuisance law, where the Supreme Court itself went ahead and said that, the slum dwellers or encroachers are like pickpocketers in big cities. But I don't know, like, what should you make of it? Anyone wants to add to this conversation? Does this conversation make sense? Do you agree to it? Do you want to dissent, have another opinion?
Yeah, Shima. So, as you were talking about beautification of the place, and also Bidisha mentioned that it would be like increasing the tourism. But what I feel was in Yamuna Riverfront project, it was like the main idea was of beautification and like providing tourism, but it did not provide a tourism. It won't provide tourism for the people who were like removed from there, like the slum dwellers, and all those people were like not basically like I read in a paper or on net, like it was mainly for the rich and elite class and was not completely open for the public. So it does not totally add up to the tourism also.
Yes, and like who is ready to pay 10 rupee, even if it is 10 rupee per head for a family of 5 or 6, and then you travel and then you eat something, and you're trying to tell that, oh, we are evicting so that you can come, we are evicting you from the site so that you can come back and take a stroll on this stretch. Um, if you read Navdeep Mathur's paper, there is reference to Renu Desai's paper also. And Renu Desai, if you do even a basic Google search on Google Scholar, you'll get her paper, and she's written extensively on this aspect of beautification and eviction of people from along River Sabarmati in Ahmedabad, and how they said that it will become a part of housing for all and stuff like that under JNURM, but nothing really happened. Okay, any other thing?
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll meet you next week. If there's nothing else. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.